Hello everyone and welcome to Australia Build Week Online 2020. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. Whether you're an attendee, speaker, partner or sponsor, without you the event couldn't happen. So thank you very much for being here. On behalf of Oliver Kinross, I'd like to personally welcome you to the event that is running from the 7th to the 11th of December, all online. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all of our sponsors for supporting us and making the event what it is. Before I introduce our speakers, just a reminder that if you have any questions for the speakers, you can submit them in the box on the right hand of your screen. If we do run out of time for questions, we'll send any unanswered ones to the speakers to answer after their session. Now, I'd like to hand you over to the speakers who will get started straight away. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the event.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Wade, and I've got the pleasure to kick off today's topics. Today I'll be talking to yourselves about quality at work, building the largest super lab in the Southern Hemisphere. A quick agenda, I'll be introducing myself, introducing the project, introducing what a super lab is. We'll go through some facts and stats about the project. We'll go through some opportunities and challenges that myself and Richard Crookes undertook, and we'll always have some time for some questions. So about myself, my name is Michael Wade, as I said earlier. I'm one of the engineering staff with Richard Crookes. We were the lucky tenderers who were awarded the UTS Central project, which is an amazing project. But a bit more about myself. So my experience is I've spent 8 years in Defence Force, just out of university, and then transitioned into construction because I love construction. So I've done defence projects, health projects, education and infrastructure projects. The key projects that I've worked on was UTS Central, which I'll talk to you about today, the Sydney Metro Northwest up in Schofields, New South Wales, nice large infrastructure project, and also the Menzies School of Health Research in Darwin, which is a beautiful project again for everyone to work with. So, introduction to the project. So this is what the Super Lab will look like. Well, sorry, does look like. Overall, UTS Central was the final building in the $1 billion UTS master plan. The project value eventually came to $330 million. A quick description of the UTS Central is that it is also known as CBO2 for those in UTS. It is a striking 17-storey glass encased building designed to be the vibrant student hub and faculty space at the heart of the UTS campus. It is the home to the new UTS Library, Facility of Law, Faculty of Engineering and IT, and the Hive Super Lab. So this is just a quick video to give you a snapshot of what the Super Lab looks like and what the initial plan for it was to be. So this was used heavily and extensively during the stakeholder engagement phase, just so that all personnel involved in the project and the stakeholders, being the wider community as well as wider UTS staff, had an understanding what the project would be and how it would turn out. A little bit about the Super Lab concept. So the Super Lab concept was born out of necessity. That is where the traditional design of educational institutions, in particular University of New South Wales, UTS, and Sydney University, were that individual learning institutions and learning areas were in designated and differentiated buildings. This made it easier for staff to run and manage these buildings as they were treated as distinct business units under one institutional banner and could be set up for sole purposes throughout. This led to institutions requiring large areas of land in order to operate effectively and also have room to expand to meet the student body needs and the growing subject areas. This size and location of many institutions reduced the ability for staff to easily and accessibly cross the campus and also safety and security issues. As shown by the images on the screen, we've got the University of Sydney on the left and the London Metropolitan University on the right. There is a stark contrast between the two. So London Met University is 12 times smaller than the University of Sydney, yet they have the same amount of courses. This is where the Super Lab was born. So the London Metropolitan University was the first academic institution to develop a Super Lab concept. This was drawn about through using high levels of IT and AV in order to make sure that there was a fluid space so that classes could be interchanged. For example, London Met University would have a full chemistry laboratory at 8 AM, and then at the end of that laboratory, it would transition into a microbiology or a physics laboratory at 10 AM. This short changeover break meant that they could fit a lot more classes into the same organisational area. This concept led to the Super Lab being born, because the Super Lab is a highly flexible yet practical area where students can work individually as small groups or as full classes. Some quick project facts. They're all up there. So the Super Lab was revitalisation of the lower basement levels of CBO2. So CBO2 and CBO1, which is the main big tower in UTS in Sydney, they share a lot of common services, which is what this area was. All up, the floor area is 1,800 square metres. The laboratory itself is designed to seat up to 270 students, and this can be broken down into a myriad of ways, into pods of 6 students, where there's 36 of them, into 7 individual discrete classes, or as one full class. One of the big design constraints or issues we had was that the Super Lab was designed to be a PC2, or a physical containment level 2 standard. This is so that they could perform microbiological lessons in the class. The hard part they did have was that due to the size of the class, it would be very hard to close off this area just for one small 35, 40 person class, given that the area was 270 people. This meant that for us as a builder and the engineers and architects, we had to design the space so that we could have more than one concurrent class at any one time. We successfully achieved this, but we'll cover that off in the due course. The big achievements for the project is that it's the largest teaching Super Lab in the Southern Hemisphere, is the largest PC2 teaching space in the Southern Hemisphere, and is the largest single space PC2 lab in Australia. So it rivals a lot of laboratories for a lot of pharmaceutical companies. Some more quick stats. So overall, the project went for the Super Lab, went for 431 days. They expended 67,000 hours worth of work in there. We had 28 contractors broken up to structures, finishes, and services, as you can see. We also had a lot of service background. So given the complexity of the building, given the level of work and type of work that they wanted to complete in the project, it meant it was very service heavy. So with that, we had 64 kilometres worth of Cat6 cable. We had 58 kilometres worth of wiring. We had 2 kilometres worth of mechanical work. We had 1.5 kilometres worth of drainage and hydraulic work, and we had 3 kilometres worth of pipe work. All of this had to be housed whilst not detracting from any of the architectural spaces or finishes which you saw in the video previously. Opportunities and challenges. With our work, as everyone knows, construction, there's opportunities and challenges. On this project, or this portion of the project, there were 4 main distinct opportunities and challenges. One was variation works, which we'll go through shortly. Another one was existing structure, so it was built in an existing building and we had to keep a lot of services going. We had service reticulation. As you saw on the last slide, there were kilometres and kilometres worth of services that need to be included in order for the lab to be workable. And there was also compliance. So being a PC2 standard, it needed to be negatively pressurised. But we'll unpack these opportunities and challenges. So variation works. So the key part of this project, being UTS Central, the largest project, UTS Central, didn't actually have the Super Lab into it until probably 12, 14 months after we started construction. This meant that the Super Lab was a pure variation, which was started off at 16 million, which ended up being a $23 million variation. This, in order to get the variation approved, we required strong stakeholder engagement, strong planning, strong value engineering, and detailed design and engineering. The stakeholder engagement was key because without that, we would never have been approved for the variation, either from the contractor side and through the project management office on UTS's side. So we had to talk and liaise with many, many different stakeholders that were internal to UTS, external to UTS, as we share common services with all UTS buildings and the greater public next door being Central Park. Planning. Planning was a key undertaking within the project. So given we had existing services, you can see some of the services on the screen now that we had already in our location. These had to be, some had to be rediverted, some had to be worked around, and others had to be capped off and reinstalled at a later date. This required us to have a really good working relationship with UTS and local authorities in order to get that to work. Design and engineering. So the concept for Richard Crookes was that all architectural and service designs would be completed 3 months prior to construction on site happening. This was to allow us to enable everything to be included and also detailed and thorough checks to be undertaken. Due to the enhanced and improved relationship UTS and Richard Crookes had, we were able to commence works on site, being structural work, structural strengthening and the like, in order to expedite the process, just so that we could hand over on time and on budget. Another key portion of the variation works was value engineering. So we worked with our architect, worked with the client, and we worked with all of our subcontractors in order to value engineer what we could to get it under the cap that we had at the time, whilst also keeping the prestige, the quality, and the usability and functionality that we required for the project. Within that, we didn't value engineer a lot within the project. We more swapped services and suppliers because we, as Richard Crookes, knew that we could get the same solutions from other areas. Another opportunity or challenge, some might say it, is that we had existing structure. So given that we were in the basement levels of the new building, these were, as you can see by the photos on the right, these were all existing walls, all existing columns. We did have new columns installed due to the new building works. However, the structure as a whole was built in the 1960s, so it required us to go through everything, identify what was there, and work around with what we could. In order to do that, we did a point cloud survey. So the point cloud survey is the picture on the bottom left. So that is the wall in the background. The wall in the picture on the left is also the background of the wall in the middle picture on the right. This picked up that the drawings from the 1960s were very, very accurate. However, there was a lot of confusion and time taken in order to convert those drawings into the CAD drawings that we have today. We also 3D modeled all the structural elements and all the services. This allowed us to develop from a concept design to a detailed design to an AFC design very quickly, and also allowed us the ability to go through and ensure that there were no clashes when construction was to commence, and also gave us the ability to foresee any issues or any truncation of areas where we may need to explore further. Service reticulation. Every good education project, construction project has a lot of services, and this was no mean feat in the laboratory. So in order to achieve what we did with the laboratory, there was 3D modelling of all the elements. We had detailed coordination to LOD 300. We used BIM quite extensively in the project, and we used point clouds for as-built as well as pre-construction. So the architectural elements were all modelled by our architect and our engineers and our services trades. This is to ensure that everything that we did need in the project could be installed in the project. We also went through a detailed coordination with the internal resources at Richard Crookes to enable us, I should say, to enable us to have a better run on site and to decrease any risk that we could. The last main opportunity challenge we had on the project was compliance. So given that it was a PC2 compliant, it needed to be in a negatively pressurized environment. This meant that we had to design for compliance, that is, use elements and finishes that were cleanable, resistant to acids, resistant to alkalis, and above all else, impervious to water and air. This required us to seal a lot of penetrations. So all up on the project, we had 16,000 penetrations that we needed to seal, similar to the photos on the right, in order to make the area compliant and airtight. The ceiling had multiple layers. So being a PC2, so we had scutcheon plates, we had caulking, we had different materials, everything going together, as well as hermetically sealed doors that you'll see down the bottom left corner, in order to make that compliance code acceptable. And hopefully you'll agree with myself that this is the picture of the final product. So if you're ever in the city, you can pop down to UTS. It's all publicly accessible. So you can walk down and see the super lab that we've just discussed today. I think it's a pretty good representation of the 3D model that we showed at the start of the video. And as you can see, it's met all the requirements It's got a myriad of different uses. So different color zones were identified so that classes could be run independently, and we could work that as a process. Of course, without this, the help of our beautiful subcontractors, client and architects, we couldn't have achieved it. And as of today, the project has now been awarded numerous project awards, including the Tertiary Building 200 million and over award at the 2020 NBA New South Wales Awards, and the Outstanding Construction Award for the Excellence in Construction Awards at NBA 2020. Now, hopefully, we'll get us some questions if anyone has any. Oh, beautiful. Thank you very much, guys, for some questions. Okay, the first question we have is, what was the most difficult quality challenge you faced when developing the Super Lab? So the biggest quality issue we had was not so much construction, was not so much the products we were using. The hardest quality issue we had was actually sealing the services and ensuring that it was cleanability. We had cleanability across all services. So this led us to go through various product testing for vinyls, carpet, resilient finishes, cool room panels, and the like, just to enable us to better agree with ourselves, the client, and OGTR, who are the eventual certifiers of the program, or the project, I should say, to make sure that it ticked all the boxes for ourselves, it ticked all the boxes for the client, and ticked all the boxes for OGTR, who are the certifiers. Another question we had, which was, was there any issues with the initial QS? So the initial project sum, which was 16.4 million, that was developed through a higher level of value engineering. However, due to all good government buildings, they had some extra float within the budget. This led to value adds into the project. So it led to expanding out certain spaces, upgrading of machinery. So in there, we bought some of the top of the range autoclaves, biosafety cabinets and the like. It just meant to add additional of those or upgrading of spec items. So within there, we went to Corian bench tops, we went Corian sinks, we had splashbacks, we had other items that the university wanted to add into the project, which initially wasn't allowed for within the budget of 16.4 million. But when the budget grew to be able to enable us to get 23 million, it helped with those items and the procurement of those. Doesn't look like there appears to be many more questions. Hopefully that meant that the talk was very good. But if there's any other issues, any other questions you'd like, I'm happy for you to forward them through to the Australian Build Week guys at Kinross or through to myself via Richard Crookes, and we'll get those answered.
Thank you, Michael. We'll now be moving on to a presentation from Rogier.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Michael. What a great presentation to start the day off with. That was fantastic. My name's Marcus Coughlin. I lead product design and research at Oracle Construction and Engineering, and I'll be the moderator for this session today, winning bids through government stimulus, a construction perspective. Before we begin, I'd just like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians in the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to the elders past and present. I extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. So thanks for joining us for this session. It'll break down into two main parts with some time for questions towards the end of the session. First up, Rogier Roelvink will take us through his thoughts on winning bids through government stimulus. After many years of strategic management advisory experience to deliver benefits to many of his clients, Rogier is driven to success and excellence in all that he does. He has a diverse background working across a broad range of projects, clients and sectors. Rogier has provided advice on business and project operations, public-private partnerships, business case and feasibility studies, supply chain optimization, procurement, and the digitisation of the built environment, with some projects project values well in excess of 1 billion. Following on from that presentation, we'll be joined by Sydney, David and Troy for the panel discussion. Please, throughout both the presentation and panel discussion, I encourage you to ask any questions you have via the chat. With any time we have left over, we'll do our best to work through those. All right, enough of me. It's now my pleasure to hand over to Rogier.
Thanks, Marcus, and I welcome you all to this little short presentation before we get into the panel discussion. As Marcus said, I'm the Customer Strategy Director at Oracle in the construction engineering part of their business, and you'll be pleased to know that today I'm not going to talk about selling you any technology. I just want to talk a little bit about winning bids through government stimulus, a construction perspective, and how the use of technology can help you in that process. Before we get into things, just some recent data, and we've all obviously seen what happened in the year 2020, but global data estimated in November recently that the global GDP has contracted by 3.8% in 2020. What does that mean? That means that a lot of governments, certainly in Australia, but around the world, they are going to put a lot of money, if they haven't done so already, into economic stimulus through investment in infrastructure. Now, we all know that infrastructure investment comes, certainly by public sector, translates into extensive procurement programs and competitions that you all as builders, as service providers in the construction industry are going to have to partake in to make sure that you get a fair share of that work. So this presentation is really talking about how we can help you with that. But yeah, just to set that up, there is a little bit of a challenge ahead, but that will also mean there's a lot of opportunity coming through infrastructure spending that governments will put out to bring the economies back out from this recession and back into the growth trajectory. So what does that leave us? An economic stimulus package that governments are putting forward is often linked to a number of criteria, not least of which that they are meant to create jobs, stimulate the associated services. They have they extend infrastructure investment extends into not just creating a project, but the whole supply chain that brings with it. It creates lots of opportunities at a social and economic level in the communities in the long run by virtue of what you create through infrastructure investment, as well as the process of creating that infrastructure asset. So that's why infrastructure investment is and has historically been proven to be used as a stimulus to get out of recessions. Sorry. That also means, though, that there's a lot of elements hanging on that infrastructure investment because it is there as stimulus investment. It needs to create something. So it's essential that there is a high level of return on investment. And return on investment is a very, very big criterion. But what that basically means is that money needs to start flowing into the community quickly, and that the asset that needs to be created is created as quickly and as efficiently as possible, so that the benefit of the asset being available also returns quickly into that community. So that's what we mean with return on investment that is linked to stimulus criteria. So it's quite an important criteria that public sector will use to look at how quickly can we get this expenditure turned into real benefits into the community, into the economy. While government is spending, they will obviously, and more often these days, put in added green credentials. They can't be seen to not do that. So, but the emphasis that a lot of climate pressures have put on this means that green credentials become another criterion that people will look at. How does that get delivered upon? How quickly can we deliver those? And how will that transpire into advances and benefits into community, in business and in economies? Certainly in Australia, but in many other parts of the world as well, Indigenous participation is increasingly critical and has to be reported on, has to be proven. How do you achieve that? How do you create wealth, improvement, stimulus in Indigenous communities as well, while you're building infrastructure assets in communities, in cities, in countries? So that's another criterion, and it needs to be proven and demonstrated upon. And then, as I already mentioned, the cash flow, making sure that money actually flows as quickly as possible from the government through the project, through the contractors, into the supply chain and into small and medium businesses. So it is very important that that obviously gets done correctly, and that money gets spent in a way that it should be, and people only get paid for what they deliver, but that no money gets delayed, because that is contrary to that speed of return and creating that economic stimulus. So there's a lot of additional criteria, and infrastructure projects may have nuances, variations on these themes as criteria that are being put forward. So the challenge that you'll find yourselves in more often than not in this situation is, how do you prove as a contractor that you can do these things, that you can deliver on the green credentials, that you are efficient and effective in doing this, and that you have the right level of Indigenous participation where that is required. And in order to prove that, to demonstrate that, you're going to need to standardize your processes, your workflows, so you can deliver consistent results. And you can, if you do that, you can collect the data and information from those processes, and because they are consistent, you can demonstrate that throughout your portfolio, and that gives you visibility into the performance and the results that you are achieving in that process. So it's very critical that you have the right tools and processes in place to allow you to do that. So what does that mean? What that means, and I briefly mentioned standardization already, it means that you need to have a look at how your capabilities stack up from managing programs, managing projects. And what you see on screen is what we've dubbed the foundational capabilities that you need to achieve that. But ultimately, what you're trying to achieve in the data and in the process is that you get hindsight. So you learn from what happened in the past, you make adjustments where that is required, and you can build on that as a continuous improvement. You want insight, you want to gain insight as to what is happening right now, so you can make real-time reactive decisions on events and incidents as they unfold. And you want to gain foresight, use data and information to make predictions, run scenarios, model them, so that you can make a proactive decision and avoid adverse impacts on projects. How do you achieve that? You achieve that by creating standardization, visibility, and connectivity, and using the tools to create that and the technology to do that. The standardization of processes, procedures, protocols and management, delivery of working, reporting, data collection, information collection and gathering. That's if you have the same process, the same tools, the same technologies that you use throughout your portfolio, you can achieve that standardization in your workflows. The visibility, by having all those systems and having tools and technology to do that, give you those insights and visibility on the data and information that will be the foundation of creating those inside, hindsight, and foresight kind of analysis. And obviously these days, the connectivity of the technologies and systems provide your ability to benefit from these enhanced outcomes, but also, as we have proven in 2020, we work remotely. Being connected, having all your systems connected, it will give you that ability too. But it's a little bit more than that. It's great enhanced outcomes from having connectivity, being able to connect data sets that wouldn't normally be connected to one another. It's this age-old adage of 1 + 1 = 3 type scenario. What falls out of having standardization, visibility, and connectivity in your systems and processes is that you can really instill consistency, manage the control of time, cost, scope, risk, and that in itself will help you. If you can prove that you can do that, it will help you in this public sector procurement, that you are consistently delivering on results, that being the time, that being on budget, that being to scope, minimizing risks, etc. The other thing, by having standardization on systems that are connected, you can create this collaboration, because people can work on the same systems in the same way wherever they are. It creates that collaboration, and the visibility with the across the systems and the connected system will give you that ability to analyze what that is doing, and all those bits and pieces of information and your ability to demonstrate that you have that and you can do that will allow you to demonstrate to any procuring organization how you will deliver on the benefits and the outcomes that they are seeking through the expenditure of the stimulus funding on that particular asset. So what I'm talking about here is having the ability to demonstrate and give the comfort to the public sector who procures for the projects that you are the right party to deliver the benefits that they're seeking, that being economic stimulus through money spent in communities, creating the asset efficiently, as I said, minimizing waste, meeting the green credentials, whatever those requirements are. Having the tools and the system standardized will allow you to demonstrate that. Obviously, the economic stimulus is very much geared to delivering the benefits. Now, benefits, as I mentioned, of the economic stimulus and the asset that needs to be created are built on social economic benefits, and that's all relevant for you. But obviously, you as a contractor also are seeking benefits. So also, what's in it for you other than hopefully a good pipeline and a big order book going forward? You are looking at some benefits and achieving some benefits as well, and using the tools, the technology, not only to prove to the contracting authority that you are the right party, you can also use the tools and technology to derive benefits for yourself. In a very, very broad generalization, the benefit categories are the pursuit of successful outcomes, whatever they are for you. They can be different. Making sure you have operating efficiencies in the way you deliver the things, the projects, and risk management and mitigation. So what do I mean with the pursuit of successful outcomes? Well, as I said, they are a little bit bespoke and specific to you and your organization. That could be a certain profit margin, it could be a certain speed of turnaround, it could be maximization in utilization, I should say, of particular assets that you've got. Whatever that is for you, that's important. The tools and technology that I was referring to earlier, without giving solutions that you use to provide comfort to the contracting authority, you can also use for yourself. If you have the data and the information, you can do analytics. You can determine which project is right for you. So you can actually maximize your chances of winning that by only selecting the projects and the programs that you want to build, that you stand a good chance based on historic data and successes you achieve there. It also allows you to speed up and optimize your schedule, for example, so that will increase your time to revenue, because the quicker you deliver something, the sooner you can invoice for it, the sooner you can get that money and get paid for it. The operating efficiencies are things that we refer to as, we always struggle with in construction, cost overruns, making sure your subcontractor costs are optimized and not overrunning, reducing redundant systems costs by having ecosystems of tools and technologies that talk to one another, and making sure that you have the success factors aligned to that. And I already referred to asset utilization earlier. So those are kind of operating efficiencies. Now, technology, how do you achieve that? Because obviously you got your systems in place now and processes in place now. What systems and tools allow you to do is to connect cost, schedule, and resources, for example, and check out for the visibility of the impact, budget, project design, and execution. how does that work? Model that, having visibility across all those things. So this is what I meant earlier with this 1 + 1 = 3 as well. You know, by connecting different data sets, you can get more out of that going forward. Risk management and mitigation, self-explanatory, but if you have visibility in what you should be doing, you have that foresight of what might be coming up, or the ability to model particular outcomes and scenarios, you can have a look at that, you can challenge on that, and you can make sure that you take the right actions. But on top of that, it also allows you to capture any regulatory compliance that you need to achieve, and potentially by having good data, good information, it minimizes the risk of claims and penalties arising of things going wrong. So what does that leave us with is governance, management, and administrative efficiencies. Technologies, tools, systems using for that will not only allow you to demonstrate to the contracting authority how you are best suited to deliver that based on experience, based on the tools and systems that you use, based on past successes that you've achieved on similar projects. You've selected the right project, you have your internal system set up to deliver success for you, or give you the highest chance to deliver success. So technology also gives you this overview, this ability to get efficiencies in your governance, your management, and the administration, because there's less data entry. If you have the right systems and tools, you have it connected, you can connect the data sets, you have a single source of truth, a common data environment. We've all heard about these terms. You know, you only have to enter it once and it's there forever and a day. It's easier for reporting, easier for analysis. It can be done for you. You can train algorithms to do things for you, to give you early warnings, to analyze, to do checking. You can do all that through that, and dashboard reporting, we're all getting familiar with that. If you not already are, it will be soon. So it makes it easy if you have the right data in the right place, collected in a way that is meaningful for you and meaningful for your client. I already alluded to planning and information research. So if you have all the data, you can decide across your portfolio what you're good at, what you're not so good at, so you can improve on what you're not so good at, and you can keep repeating what you're very good at, but also helps you select the projects that are your strength, play to your strength. So in a competitive environment, you got a better opportunity of achieving success. And obviously, ultimately, best practices, performance management, standardization will give you the ability to roll that out and have that consistency throughout your organization. Recognizing all that, how do you rate your chances to be awarded contracts? Have you got the right systems in place? Can you select the right project? Can you demonstrate correctly and truly with evidence that you are delivering value for money, that you have done so in the past on the particular type of project? How do you deliver on that promise of return on investment that is so badly needed in the economies, in the local economies, in the national economies, in the state economies? Because we are in this recession period, we need to get out of that. So eyes are on you, the contractors, to deliver on that promise. The government has made the money available and will continue to do so, but we as an industry have to deliver on that and achieve those outcomes. And we need to be able to demonstrate that we are doing this. We need to make sure that we are not wasting money, that we are not letting processes get in the way of achieving outcomes. So systems, tools, technologies, people, process, and technology all need to work in balance. And that will give you the opportunity to reap the rewards of this infrastructure expenditure that is out as stimulus funding. Hopefully that has given you a little bit of insight as to how technology can help you, how it can give you insight and discover new ways of working, unlock the endless possibilities that we're seeking to do so. And I will now hand over or continue into the panel discussion. Hopefully there's lots of questions. I haven't checked on the chat yet. If there are, please do so. If you haven't done so, please put them in now. If you have any particular questions about the presentation, I'd love to talk to you about that as well. So without further ado, let's hand over to the panel.
Thank you very, very much, Roger. That was a fantastic presentation, mate. Well thought through. Love that final point around not letting processes get in the way of desired outcomes too. For everyone in the audience, as Roger just pointed out, if you haven't already, please add any questions you have for Roger to the Q&A hub on the right side of the viewing panel. We'll get into the panel discussion in a minute, and then we'll come back for some Q&A. But first, it's my pleasure to introduce Sydney, David, and Troy Chapman. Sydney Mudau is a project manager with over 18 years of experience in major civil engineering infrastructure, project delivery, currently working for AECOM Australia. He has been involved in a diverse range of projects spanning 4 countries, namely South Africa, Mozambique, England, and Australia, under greenfields and brownfields site conditions, with comprehensive contributions to all project lifecycle stages, including bids, tenders, design management, contract management, and stakeholder engagement. The projects varied across construction industries in roads, bridges, rail, mining, and dams, infrastructure, among others, both in private and government sectors. Welcome, Sydney.
Thank you.
Next up, we have David Zammit, who also joins us from AECOM and has worked across multiple engineering disciplines in the commercial market space, including building services, specialist services, structures, facades, planning, and cost management. For these disciplines, he is tasked with managing thought leadership, pursuits, client relationships, and delivery for commercial office, residential, and retail and hotel projects. Welcome, David.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
And last up, we have Troy, who's a director with national and international experience in procurement, commercial management, project management, quality assurance systems, warranty management, and engineering. After graduating with degrees in mechatronic engineering and science, he has an extensive career working with major projects for companies throughout the United Kingdom and Australia. He has worked in a variety of industries, including utilities, rail, and civil construction. Welcome, Troy.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, let's get into it then. Look, we all know that this year's budget is a COVID response budget, but do you think it's worth the time, effort, and resources for contractors to react as Rogier has outlined in his talk?
Absolutely.
Maybe I'll kick off on that one. Yeah, so I think it's always a good time to understand your business, the business that you're in, how your business is functioning, and to invest in understanding if the pursuit is right for you and how your company is aligned with what's going on in the market. So regardless of technology or not, it's always a good time to understand your business, particularly in the current times that we're seeing at the moment.
Excellent. Troy, do you have something you want to add there?
So absolutely. I mean, in today's world where it's coming more and more difficult to operate and, you know, is more efficiencies you can come will return greater return, is the more fat you can trim, the more lean you can get, the more systems that sort of review and help themselves, the more hindsight, insight, foresight you get over your operations will definitely lead to a more robust company, and therefore give a more robust tender or a more robust output and value for money. Definitely.
Excellent. Sydney, do you have anything you'd like to jump in with?
Yeah, also, I mean, during the pandemic, you rather have systems that will cope within the system when you're tendering. So you do want to get involved in the tender time to help the government, obviously, and at the same time, while you're helping the government, you're helping your company achieve something that is, I guess, in the pandemic, it's not a normal conditions. So you're improving the system, improving the people, the way they engage the stakeholders.
Fantastic. Rogier, did you have anything you'd like to add towards the end there?
Yeah, look, I echo what my fellow panelists have said, and obviously I just talked about it, so I do believe that it's worth doing. But you know, progress is continuous. Yeah, it doesn't stand still, and we are in this fourth industrial revolution. We are in construction 4.0, whatever is the latest that you may have heard of, and technology isn't going to go away, and it's going to find its way into your organization, into your business anyway. So you might as well start and get on board, because it's just not going to go away. So yes, there is a drive now to do it. We're responding to a COVID crisis. We're responding to a recovery budget, but the technology isn't gone away. The progress isn't going to go away. So I don't think it's a waste of time or effort to do so.
Absolutely. Look, Roger, during your talk, you're talking quite a bit about being able to demonstrate the delivery of value through these projects. So just wondering how, as a contractor, you would ensure that stimulus projects are delivering value and stimulus.
Okay, yeah, well, that's fair. So if you think about economic stimulus in very, very simple terms, yeah, we're talking about potentially, I'm not only talking about billion-dollar projects, but let's take a billion-dollar project as an example. A billion-dollar project in an social infrastructure asset that needs to be created delivers value in the economy in a different ways. It delivers access to money for the fellow consultants here of ACOM, to give them an opportunity to be involved in the design and all the other services that they provide. So they get the income from that, which allows them to continue to employ people. It creates the asset that brings value into the community where that asset is meant to deliver a certain function. It delivers value in the construction industry because there is a whole construction supply chain that benefits from there, but it also delivers value into local economies. It creates jobs for people who live in those areas, and those people spend the money in the shops and the cafes and everything like that, and they go on holiday in Australia. And let's not go internationally this year, just go into Australia this year. How about your fellow Australians? But that is all, how do you do that? Now, what we don't want to do is have money being stuck in each one of those levels as it goes down, and demonstrating that you are an efficient operator by showing, hey, I can show you that I don't run over time, I don't run over cost, I stay within budget, I pay my subcontractors on time every single time. Yeah, those are very little things that you can prove as a contractor that show you how you contribute to making that infrastructure stimulus funding making its way into the local communities. That's what I mean with making demonstrating that. But you need data, you need evidence to do that, and you need the system to collate that to show that you can do that. I'll hand over to the rest of the panelists, but that's kind of the idea of that, how I see that demonstration of that happening.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so just adding to that, the other thing is to watch out for that you're to ensuring you're giving value is to watch for signs where value will be lost. What some things you need to watch for is where value could be lost is things like Australia's done very well in the COVID environment. Other countries have not done so well, so you need to make sure that your supply lines are mapped and understood. Because if you lose those supply lines, you'll definitely, it'll have a big impact on spending where it goes. Talk about local stimulus. You also need to make sure that you've got a robust supply lines. You don't, as Roger was alluding to, you need to make sure that you keep your subcontractors functioning. It's an important, and your secondary subcontractors, to make sure that the whole system is flowing. Not just the cash flow, but you've got to remember that you've got to analyze these systems to make sure they're not in any additional state. It's very important in these environments. The other thing you should also be looking at is your workforce as well, is to make sure that what are you going to do if there is a knock on that workforce, if somebody does get COVID or something. It's how you're going to keep that whole system operating and running if there is any knock or any review. So to ensure that you keep giving value for money, you just need to make sure that you keep a visibility on your supply lines and feed that back into the system and keep that under control.
A great point about attempting to anticipate some of the unexpected events that are bound to pop up there, Troy. David, Sydney.
Also, I'll say what Troy has highlighted. What Troy has highlighted about being upfront about things. It's about we shouldn't be just agreeing to what the government. If they're giving us stimulus money and says spend it within 6 months, we need to have realistic targets as well. Be honest and upfront about it, because sometimes we, as a contractors, a client comes in and says, "Oh, you can do this in 6 months." So yeah, we agree. And during COVID, we know that resources are a bit scarce, and we're just agreeing to certain things that it's unachievable. So we end up disappointing the customers and the stakeholders. So I think being upfront to say, "Hey, you can't do that in 6 months." We need to be, honest about it. I think that's another way to show that you're giving value instead of, not being honest, and the project becomes 2 to 3 months late, and it costs more than what was anticipated. Regardless, it's a stimulus money package. That extra money could have gone to another project, which is deserving as well.
Very tempting to set yourself up to fail. Yes, in today's world.
But if you have the data,
there's more stimulus.
Oh yeah, David.
No, I was going to say, based on what Sydney is saying, is like, if you have the data and you can prove that this is physically not possible, you can have let's call it an adult conversation with the people around it, and you don't set yourself up to fail. You don't mislead expectations under the guise of there's a big pot of money available, let's go and grab it and then see what happens kind of scenario. Nobody wants to be in that scenario, and certainly not when we're talking about taxpayers' money and stimulus funding and trying to get people back into the workforce and the economy running again. So yeah, I agree totally with what Sydney's saying, and being able to have an adult conversation about that, being open and honest on both sides of the fence.
David, your thoughts?
One of the things that I note as well is when you're in your organisation, sometimes it's easy to take things for granted. You may be a local company with a local supply chain, but if you don't tell the people that you're bidding to, and if you don't set a policy around that and be able to communicate that effectively, it's kind of pointless to a degree. So you may have a COVID plan, you may have all these things in place, but unless that's written up in a certain way and delivered in your bid, in some respects it may as well not exist. So it's great to have the plan and have the data, but communicating as well is very, very important.
A fantastic point there, David. I think we were just talking about this a moment a little bit, but obviously when trying to win a tender from a developer with government stimulus requirements, is there anything that the people listening to this session should be bidding organisations should be paying extra attention to?
I'll jump in on that one too. So I guess it depends on the type of development, but we look at what there's many tracts of land that government is trying to sell off to developers at the moment to stimulate the economy. Many of them have a lot of social corporate responsibility attached to them, social housing, public domain, those sort of things. So as a contractor, how can you help the developer achieve those goals? Have you worked in the public housing sector before, and can you help them deliver that? There's a lot of requirements around them that can be a little bit tricky. How can you enhance public domain and enhance a community asset? These are all the things that the developer themselves will be thinking about, and they want to do that in a way where they still make a return and develop an asset that they can be proud of. So it's marrying the two of getting it right for the community and getting it right for the developer, which all tracks back to some of the things we've already been talking about.
Yeah. I'll just jump in there. Look, I think David's nailed it completely. It really is. Look, most government organisations have the price quality method, or the price quality sustainable method of price versus non-price, and that non-price in a stimulus package for economic stimulus, as per Roger's presentation as well. Maybe some other factors, Aboriginal participation, environmental, which is big in the building industry, to make sure that's going to last. It is going to be value for money in that process. It's going to be you know, it is something that we really have to look at, you know, that you, and as the economy goes, is that can you supply locally? Most state organizations will want you to supply locally to get that economy stimulation, you know, money flowing around, local jobs and things like that in that space, local hiring and things like that. So absolutely, I think David's nailed it quite well there. Yeah.
And learning from lessons learned. Yeah, we all know that not the first time we do things, it might not be the perfect outcome, but admitting to that and saying these are the improvements we're going to make because we've learned from this last time. We know it works. We made those changes retrospectively in this public space. Afterwards, we're now going to design those in right from the start. You know, doing those kind of navel gazing sessions is very important as well. That will help you achieve that success in your next project.
Also, just to add, you definitely need the customer input or engaging. I think as you know, consultants and contractors, we're scared to engage the public because we don't want to hear the truth about maybe they don't want something there. Everybody wants a quick point A to B, but they don't want to see construction. They don't want you to slow down the traffic and do the construction. But at the end of the day, it's making those customers understand how the more information you give them, the better, because that will give you a chance to say, okay, we know what they're doing, we know what's going on. So it's engaging early as well with those customers.
Fantastic, thank you. Sydney, I might stick with you for the next question here. Which, if any, of the recommendations that we've been discussing so far today hold true for non-stimulus projects?
Pardon, just to repeat that question?
Certainly, sorry. I was just asking which of any of the recommendations that we've been discussing here today hold true for the non-stimulus projects?
I would say, I mean, the biggest things, technology as well, you know, and value engineering. You need to demonstrate. You don't have to be using there's lots of programs out there, but we tend to use them for the wrong things. I mean, I've seen P6 being used for KPIs, not being used for what is it intended to do. Yeah, it's good. You can use it for KPI. Let's use the tools we have to demonstrate that we are capable and we're gonna be able to deliver. So, and then don't be afraid to use value engineering. Suggest things to the client. It's not always that the client want a road, a building differently. You can suggest something that is better for the customer and better for the client and saving money for the client. So I think technology plays a big role in that as well. And so engaging that client and let them work through their business case, let them work through what they want to achieve. It's always using of technology as well, I'll say.
Can I just to build on what Sydney said, if you have the right technology and you're trying to convince your client of a better option, having the ability to demonstrate, to show them, to create fly-throughs, to do a side-by-side comparison why one option is better than another, to run models. And I know ACOM and others do a lot of work around this kind of modeling and why certain solutions are better than others. That's the kind of stuff that I think that we have now the benefit of technology that can help us do this and create these options and create real visibility into the differences between them in a way that it can be understood by non-technical audiences as well. And I think just on the points that Sydney was making in terms of communication and bringing those points across, I think that there's a real opportunity there that maybe is not being used as much to date.
Yeah, so adding to that also, I would say that mapping, it's all about reducing risk, and mapping of supply lines and everything is going to be advantageous no matter which mapping. One of the advantages, of course, of mapping your supply lines, there's new legislation out around modern slavery. Companies over 100 million need to report to make sure that there's or not need to, optional can report, but most of them will choose to report on where things are being built, to make sure there's no, and the kind of workforces you're engaged. So mapping those out and understand the stability as you go through that process, you'll find there's advantageous. And the same with the new changes in the Security of Payments Act that came out last year, is paying the subcontractors on time will also add that value. So, you know, is that for non-stimulus packages, there's some of these things that you do as you streamline and improve your organization, you'll find those benefits will flow through across the organization and across your responsibilities.
Excellent. David, is there anything you'd like to add to recommendations that also hold true for non-stimulus projects?
Well, yeah, no, I generally agree with everything that the previous panelists have said. I think in non-stimulus areas where you're not having the government as a client, if you've come from that world, you're probably more used to relying on your contacts, getting a sharp price in there, and those sort of things. And I guess it's just about understanding that if you're now going the other way, there, you know, I think there's a question there about the length of some of these tenders that you have to put in. It's a very different bidding environment. And so that is why if you're now going into this government area, having your finger on the pulse of what's happening in your business and knowing the numbers and being able to report them easily will save you a lot of time in the long run.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Look, we've touched on technology quite a bit throughout the conversation today, so maybe I'll just end there before we move into a couple of questions from the audience. Everybody out there, if you want to add in a question, now's a great time to do it, and we'll get through them in a moment. So, gentlemen, what role does technology have to play in demonstrating value in your bids?
Shall I start? Representing our
well, yeah,
maybe I'll start and I'll hand it over. Look, as I said before, I think it's the ability to demonstrate with evidence and back that up that you can deliver that you have got that as Troy was saying earlier, that you have a supply chain that you can rely on, and you can demonstrate that you are paying them on time every single time, kind of thing, through past data, dashboards, reports, whatever it is that you put forward. It's all those kind of things. I've mentioned it a few times today, is being able to demonstrate that you are the right company, contractor for that particular work based on the experience and the successes you achieved in the past. That's what data allows you to do. It allows you to give that as a robust, not just trust me, I'm a doctor type response, but trust me, I am the right contractor because here is all the evidence of where I've done that before. And I think that's how technology allows you to do that.
I mean, also technology will allow you, even if you haven't been. So sorry, Dave. Also okay. The technology that allows you, if it's your first time using doing a project, if you have a technology also that you can use that to monitor, you know, your progress and capture that lesson learned for future. So it's something that technology will always do. So we need to stop putting things on a paper and make sure that it's visible enough. Visible enough in terms of graphics, in terms of fly-throughs, as Roger said. So it does help in that way. Sorry, Dave.
Yeah, and just picking up on what Roger was saying here as well. So in a bid, you can claim pretty much anything. You can claim you're the best contractor in the world, but it's the evidence that's actually going to sell your proposition. And so the access to the evidence for your bid is really what we're talking about here. So if you have your system set up so that data is freely available, so you can provide that evidence, it will just elevate your bid to a level much better than possibly your competitors who are possibly just claiming they're good at certain things rather than actually being able to demonstrate it. So that's where the real value comes in here.
Yeah, and just adding to what David said, absolutely, you know, government always wants to know have you got the experience, have you done it before? And technology will map out your quality control systems, potentially your risk profiles before and past, how you manage those sorts of things. Is that you will always want to see as much evidence, you know, as everyone said. It's all very well to say that you're good, you know, if you can demonstrate you're good through various, you know, past experience, quality controls, safety checks, whatever it may be, that the technology you engage in that's going to give you an overall bid that you've accepted those key areas as per Roger's presentation, you know, time, cost, quality, risk, those sorts of things. And so those are the key things that you need to be able to demonstrate to be a successful tenderer.
Thank you, gentlemen. We've got a great question here from the audience. I'll just read that out for you. I think it's addressed to you all. There is such diversity in tender lengths. Some limit you to 5,000 per question. Some allow for over 30,000. Do you think they need to be standardized?
I wish.
I agree. It is always going to be subject to the client. You know, some clients want more detail, some people want precise details, some people, the issue is you have a lot of words. It's very hard to compare like for like. If you have short words, you may be missing something that you can't compare like for like. Is really, you know, a good tender relies on a good client, you know, and a good client will outmap exactly the areas that you need to demonstrate so they can compare like for like. It shouldn't be subject to number of words. It should be subject to the quality that you're demonstrating, the sustainability that you're demonstrating, whether that's economic in the case of stimulus packages, you know, whether it's Aboriginal participation or whatever it may be. It should be very clear and defined. So some tenders will want a lot more detail in certain spaces. And as those ratios shift as well for government, so the ratio may shift towards, in this case, economic stimulus, is that they'll probably want to see more in that space, which requires more words. You know, wherever they want to see more cost benefit, is that then there'll be more numbers. So it's a bit of an unrolling game, unfortunately. You know.
Yeah, but let's be honest here. You see some shocking tenders every now and then that just ask for everything under the sun because they think they might need it. So you've got to contend with that as well. I mean, 30,000 words, I think it's half the first Harry Potter book, right? That's a lot of words. And really, you shouldn't be writing read 30,000 words on one particular policy. So the real thing is what sets your business apart in that particular area and how crisply and concisely can you convey that in that section? Because I think you're much better off having it be brief but really punchy and talking about why you're the best in this particular category rather than length. God, just
I
feel everybody's pain on this particular
Oracle all the time, massive amounts of information that only this much is really relevant, but for some guy in government has ever thought, I need to know everything just to be sure.
Well, I think that's a point that I was going to make, picking up what Troy was saying. It's asking the relevant question. That's more important. You know, a good tender organization asks the relevant question, and if you ask a correct question, you can get a correct answer, whether that's in 5,000 words or in 30,000 words. It doesn't really matter. The challenge you have is, as David said, you get a question answer, just give us everything. You're going to get everything, and maybe none of it is relevant to what you're actually trying to select things on. So it's the relevancy of the question. The other thing I want to say, just because you have a limit of 5,000 words or 30,000 words doesn't mean you need to take all those words either. You can do it in less. If you can do it in less, better. I think I've seen tenders in previous roles come back and says, just because we gave them a word limit, they actually went to the word limit. That wasn't the intention of the word limit. So, you know, it's the relevancy of the questions is important, and as Dave was saying, is clear, concise answers to those punchy questions. It's a far better way than trying to work out whether we should standardize government tendering, because I don't think that will ever going to work.
Excellent. Sydney, anything?
Yeah, plus, I mean, it will never work. Yeah, I was going to say it will never work to standardize a question, because the client, even if it's government, different department require different questions being answered because of their stakeholders. So be precise. you know, to me, I'm still an engineer. I love bullet points. I want to get to the point as quick as possible. I don't want to go on. So I think we should go back to the basics. Let's go back to the basic and stop writing essays for something that we want to get to. You know, we know the solutions, and you know, asking contractors to write an essay, I think it's just it shouldn't happen. But anyway, yeah, let's get to the point quicker, and we'll get to the answers. Yeah.
Even if you could standardise everything, the government would come up with a new question next week anyway.
That's right. Well, that's not always the case.
Might just leave it there, John. Look, we're right on time. So look, I'd encourage you to all to reach out to Rogier, Sydney, David and Troy if you'd like to continue the conversation. It's clear that this topic will be front of mind for many over the coming year. And just to wrap up, thank you all very much for joining us. And I'd like to extend a huge thank you to Rogier, Sydney, David and Troy for your time and such a great conversation to wrap this up. It was fun to be part of. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thanks for your team, Marcus.
Thank you much for hosting us.
Thanks, everybody.
See you guys. Cheers.
We know that turning big plans into successful projects takes the right tools, teamwork, and insights. That's why we've brought together market-leading project management solutions to create the most comprehensive cloud platform that drives collaboration by connecting your teams, processes, and data across the project lifecycle. From planning and scheduling to project delivery and financials, through handover and operation, you need proven solutions that boost productivity and control and transform data into insights to power success today and tomorrow. For years, we've delivered innovative solutions built on a foundation of deep industry expertise and the security and data capabilities of Oracle. Today, we're building on that past to help you build tomorrow.
That's the end of the session. Thank you very much to all of our speakers, our sponsors, and a big thank you to everyone who has joined us in the audience today. You will each receive an email with a link to an on-demand copy of today's session. This is normally sent within 48 hours. Please tune in for other sessions that are available both live and demand this week. From the 7th to the 11th of December, we have sessions running in both the morning and in the afternoon. You can log into the event platform and plan your agenda and add them to My Event Planner to create a customized plan for your week. You can also click on the sponsors, message them, and set up meetings with attendees, speakers, and sponsors. We do hope you enjoyed this webinar and very much looking forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you.